Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to the fish room. This is Andrew Perkowski checking in again. Today's video is going to be about my Lamia tiger colony, and also wanting to talk about a plant that I am just loving right now. This is my Dwarf Lily. This is an Asian plant classified as Nymphaea nucali, also known as Nymphaea stellata, but you can find it in the aquarium trade just as a dwarf lily or a red dwarf lily. And this is an Asian plant, so it makes perfect sense that I would keep it in a tank filled with fish from the island of Hispaniola. One thing that's cool about the lilies is that they grow off these bulbs, which I have about half sunk into a saucer that has dirt capped with gravel, and you can see that it puts out these rhizomes, and then it'll shoot these long stalks called petioles up to the surface, where I end up with lily pads. The plants in this genus are commonly referred to as water lilies, which is what Nymphaea actually means. But in some places they're referred to as lotuses. And I think they're incredible. One thing I like about them is the clear differentiation between the tops and the bottoms. And you can see this right here. This leaf on the left is a surface plant, whereas this other one next to it is the underside. And there's a much darker color, far more vascular in appearance, whereas this one does have a touch of green to it that's going to help it with photosynthesis. Apologies for the duckweed. If anyone keeps aquaria, they know it's pretty much going to be everywhere. So this plant was not doing the best for me for a little while. I was actually having some issues where the bulbs were being knocked out of the saucer. And then one day I just shoved them down further, and lo and behold, the plant has exploded and is now covering the surface. Anyone that's seen updates in the past about this tank knows that I did have a really large Rotala indica in here. I did have to cut that way back, especially as this tank evolved with more surface cover. It was blocking out some of the light for the Rotala. So it has been cut back. Luckily I have a pretty large one still in my Amica tank, and I have some trimmings elsewhere. So no worries, it'll come back. Also in here I have a couple cryptocoryns and these two pots, because I'm always doing plant experiments. And then that over there is a pot full of Bacopa monieri, also known as moneywort. And that's one from the US. So I wasn't necessarily going for a biotope in this aquarium, that's for sure. Now, talk about these fish. The Lamia tiger, this is an undescribed species from Lake Miragon in Haiti, which is, like I said, on the island of Hispaniola. And one thing to note about them is they are definitely prolific, and they don't mess with their fry. As you can see, there are a number of them all growing out, looking great. The parents, or the mom I should say, they don't drop many fry at a time, but the ones that are dropped are pretty large. And although I normally post videos about Gadiids, I definitely love having these guys. The name Limia actually comes from the Latin limus, which means mud, because some of the species in this genus are known for their feeding habits of sifting through mud. So, again, the perfect setup. I have them in a gravel tank, but since I feed them, they don't necessarily have to go sifting through mud. Plus, gravel's a lot easier to maintain in the aquarium. That's a female, and then a smaller male next to him. You'll also see Corydor's panda swimming around. Because you need to have some bottom feeders. I do have an albino bristlenose and sister species swimming around in here somewhere. Okay, here. Try and get a nice idea of what we're talking about for the males. One thing you might notice, come back. There's not a lot of differentiation in terms of the body plan for the male and females. That's because there's really not much sexual selection. These guys are ambush breeders, so the male will basically just chase down a female and stick her with his gonopodium. Not the most romantic thing. But one thing about that is that it will remove the chance for sexual selection from the female's choice. So other species where they might have more of a mating display, you'll see a higher degree of sexual dimorphism in terms of size, color, like finnage, any of a number of things. But these have a fairly consistent body type. It was actually fairly hard to sex them out, as it took until they were probably about 6 or 7 months old to even tell if I had male or female. Or I should say 6 or 7 months after I got them. Corydor's panda is actually, that's probably my favorite of all the Cory species. Really small fish. Doesn't mess with anybody, and they do tend to hang out together, which I like. But I'm not really talking about them today. Oh, my albino bristlenose, he is back in the corner. I should say more likely a she. The bristles are not really defined on that fish. But I prefer keeping albino bristlenose if I'm going to keep algaeters, simply because the fact that the albinos, they don't see very well, so they don't hide as much. So they basically spend all their time out feeding. There's a bunch of younger fry. The younger fry will definitely hang out closer to the surface before venturing further into the deep to hang out with the parents and the other subadults. And you can see I do have a heater in here. I feed them pretty much anything. A real simple fish to keep, and beautiful. If you guys like what I'm doing, hit like and subscribe, and I'll be sure to post more updates in the future.